So go ahead and just like before, you can select all and we'll cut it out. So you can delete it, or let's right click new file, and this is es6 classes.js, and let's save that. And here will be control V, or you can paste it, right click and paste. So you can save this and close it. Now let's go back to index.js, and here as you see I am out, so I need to be inside. So always be inside practice app, actually not React apps. You have to be in practice app. And let's start the server, npm start. So let's go ahead and create our class component. So when we're creating a React component, there are a few set of rules that we need to follow before we can't just create it. So there are a few rules and we need to follow these. So the component's name should start with an uppercase letter. So the component name that we're giving should start with an uppercase letter, just like how when we created ES6 classes, when we gave the name of the class, it was in capital letter. Now it has to include extends react.component statement. So this statement creates an inheritance to the react.component and gives us access to react.component's functions. Now I'll show it to you as I do it, and I'll explain what that means. It also requires a render method. So this returns the HTML value. So let's go ahead and do that. So in the beginning we have to import React from React, and we'll also have to import React DOM from React DOM. So this is compulsory for all your files, and sometimes we don't need one of them or something like that, but this is compulsory. So just go ahead and put it, and if it gives us a warning saying any of the files is not used, we can just remove it. So then let's the first rule is to give the name a capital letter. So let's call it as books. And the second rule is that it should include the extends react component statement. So let's do that. So extends react dot components. It's just component, not components. And you can open and close the brackets. So what does that mean? So why am I, so before when we did it, so the parent class was user and the child class was employee. Now when we said extends user, it basically means class books extends react.component. That means that the parent class is react.component and this books is just a child class. So we can use all the methods, the functions, all the variables and the data it holds in the books class. So that's the advantage of extending it, and that's the reason we have to use this is a compulsory extends react.component. And after this the third rule is to always have a render. So this converts it to HTML, and that's the reason we need to have render. And then you can go ahead, open the brackets and close it. And because render is a function, it has to return some value. So let's return a JSX value. Let's return, open the brackets, or actually you don't, and then the h1 tag, and say this is the collection of all the books I have read. Alright, so after closing the h1 tag, you need to close render, then you need to close this. So that is done as well. I hope you've installed the extensions because they're very useful. then we need to render it. So we'll call react dom dot render, and the first argument it takes. So before we used to put some variable or something else. So this time the argument here would be the component itself, and that is what we're going to render. So go ahead and use the greater symbol, the less than symbol, and then say books. That is the component right here. I think you saw that coming into light, so we're using it. So when you remove it, you can see that it becomes dark, and when you say books, it's basically lighting up, showing that we're using this class, we are actually rendering it. So books, give it one space, and then you need to put the backward slash and then close it. So this is how you're going to call the component, comma. This is the usual document. This is where we want our file to enter. So document, so where we want our app to enter. So document get element by ID, and go ahead and save this. So once you've saved it, let's go check it in Google Chrome, and the value is here. So this is the collection of all the books I've read, so it's rendered perfectly, and you've created your first class component. Great. So we will be looking at how we can create function component, but further on in our tutorial in the next few modules, we will be using class components itself, but it is always good to know how to use function components, because they are quite important as well. So let's go ahead and look into that. So go ahead and we will comment this out. Sorry, you can just comment this out actually, or you can delete it, either one of them. So that is Control K and C. I'm going to remove it. Alright, so let's create our function component. So it is the same as the class component, but created using function component instead. So class components are better, and obviously that is what we'll be using further. So let's go ahead and create it. Now firstly, we will be saying function welcome, and we will be giving it some props value. We'll be talking about props a little later. I have another entire segment just for props, because that is important as well. And a lot of these questions of how to create a class component, how to create a function component, and how to convert a function component to class component they're all interview questions. So please listen to this carefully and also make notes for yourself, so that will help you when you're giving an interview to get a job. So all these concepts are very important. And then this function will obviously return a value that is in JSX. So it will say hello, comma, open and close the brackets. So here we will be saying props dot name. Now you must be wondering what this means. I will explain it to you right away as soon as we write our render function. So render, and here we will be putting obviously we'll be giving our component value, open the tag and welcome. So give it a space and backslash and then close it. But as you see here, this is how we're giving our value to the function, so from the components. So when I further discuss about props, then I will tell you how it works. So for now, just we are getting the value for name using props. So we're going to say name is equal to, that's John Doe, and right after the closing of the tag. So this is how you call components. So you pass in arguments, and here it goes, and you use props dot name, like just how we used to access object values. If you remember earlier, that is how we give argument value to welcome, and it will get accessed here, and props dot name will be accessed here. So then you say comma, document dot get element by id root, and go ahead and save the file. Now you can see hello John Doe, and this is how you will be creating a function component, and we've also used props. So I'll go ahead and show you something else as well. So you can give different values, as you can say you can remove name and say age is equal to 18, and here we can say props dot age. Alright, so then looks like it's giving me some kind of a warning. Okay, so I'm just going to do that and save. Let's see if that works. Okay, so that's how it's going to work, and when you can create multiple things like this, and it can be accessed using props. So as I told earlier, we'll be talking about props, and they're very important as well. Now, so how do we convert a function component to a class component? So this can be an interview question. This is very important. So let's go ahead and see the guidelines and all the steps required to do it. There are 5 steps. So let's go ahead and look at that. Now, before we do that, I just wanted to show you something else. So let's go ahead and fix this up, and let's say hello props dot name and I am props dot age. So this value will be coming from here. So now age is here. Let's put name as well. Name is equal to John Doe, and that's the age. Now both gets accessed, and let's go ahead and save this, and now you're going to see hello John Doe and I am 18. So you can put multiple values as arguments for welcome, and you can access it over here using props. Now let's go ahead and look at that. So please write these points down. So go ahead and pause this video and write it down, because this is very important. And we will be converting that function which we just created, that function component that we just created, we will be converting it to a class component, and this might as well be an interview question. So create an ES6 class with the same name that extends react.component. So let's go ahead and do that. So please write down these steps, and I will explain these steps as we go on. And then the second step is add a single empty method to it called render. Move the body of the function to the render method. Then the fourth point is replace props with this.props in the render body. Delete the remaining empty function declaration. So let's go ahead and do that, and follow the points as I go through. I will not be showing this again, and I will be repeating the points and going and coding it just like that. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and do the first step. Alright, so here the first step is create an ES6 class with the same name that extends react.component. Now, so let's remove this. Actually, you can remove that and say class welcome, and obviously we'll have to use the extends react.component. So extends react.component, open the brackets, and then close the brackets here. Now the second point is add a single empty method to it called render. Is an empty method called render. Open the brackets and then close it. So let's close it outside. Now there are 2 brackets here and 2 brackets here. Then after this, what's the third point? Move the body of the function into the render method. We've already done that because we put render outside itself. So this has to be inside the render function. The body of that previous function component should be inside the body of the render function. And the fourth point is replace props with this dot props. So let's go ahead and do that. This dot props, and here this dot props. Okay, then the fifth point and the last point is delete the remaining empty function declaration. So that is already done. Now let's go ahead and save this and see if there are no errors. We have no errors, and we can go check it in our Google Chrome. Yes, so there are no errors. It's obviously the same thing. And if let's actually just see by making some changes. Let's call this person as Mike this time. And that worked. So hello Mike, and I am 18. So let's make him 21. Save it. It's 21. So it works perfectly well. So we have successfully converted a function component into a class component. We've also used props here. We will be learning about props further ahead as well. Now let's go to the next one. That would be the component constructor. So if there is a constructor function in your component, this function will be called when the components gets initiated. When we created an ES6 class previously, we also used an instance of that class, if you remember. So we created an instance of a class. So that's the blueprint. Similarly, so when I said, and when we call the instance, when we use the instance actually, the constructor function was called. So here it's like if there is a constructor function in your component, this function will be called when this particular component is initiated. So the last time it was an instance. So if you remember earlier in ES6 classes, a constructor would be initiated when an instance of a class was created. Similarly, so the constructor function is where you initiate the properties, and we'll be using super. Now it executes the parent component's constructor function, and your component has access to all the functions of the parent component. Now it will also execute the parent component. Our parent component here is, as I told earlier, is react.component. So we will also be accessing the constructor which is of the react.component by using the super keyword. So let's go ahead and see all that. This is very exciting. Now let's remove this again, or you can comment it out. Anything is fine. So let's comment this actually, because you can use it for your later reference. So class books extends react dot component. I know it's repetitive, but with repetition comes practice, and practice makes you perfect. So you have to keep typing all this so it just comes to the tip of your hands. Let's create a constructor for this, and here open the brackets and close it, and we'll also be calling the super function, and we're just calling the super function. We're not creating a super function. Here we are creating a constructor, and hence we're opening the brackets, and we'll give it a state. But before this, let us go ahead and render. So in a class component, according to your second step, we should always have a render function. We'll open the render function and return a value that will be, we'll open a h2 tag and I hope you can see this clearly. The author of all these books are, and here we'll have to give it some value, and that will be coming from our constructor. So let's go ahead and we'll create a this dot state value and open the brackets and close it. Create author, that will be j.k dot Rowling. Alright, so as I said earlier, our constructor function is your component. So this function will be called when the component is initiated. As soon as we initiate the component that will be in the render, the constructor function is actually called, and we will be using the value from here to here, and it's quite simple actually. So this dot state dot author. So what just happened here? So when we create a constructor and we will create a state, and we will be using the state in here. It's as simple as that. We will further get into detail about this a little later. So basically, for now, you need to understand that the value is being taken from here. And let's close this and we'll call the render. So react DOM dot render and books. This is how we call our component. Now as soon as we do this, it will go call our constructor, and as soon as the constructor is called, this dot state is initiated, and here we will be using the state of the constructor, and we will access the author value. So then here we'll say document dot get element by id root. Save this, and you should see the author of all these books are J.K. Rowling. So we have a component constructor which we just created successfully, and this is very important as well. So what we did, we'll have a small recap. We created a constructor when a component is initiated, a constructor is called. When the constructor is called, we'll render it with the value that the constructor possesses. So that is what we have done, and we will be seeing the next one. So the next one would be nested components. So go ahead and comment this, or you can remove it if you are confused. So Control K C, and before you do this, please do not comment import React and import React DOM. It will not work if you've done that. So do not comment this, only comment the ones under it from here to here. Okay. So it's just this button, you can do that and it will go back up. So it's just a single line, but everything's right here. But please do comment it out. Okay, or you can remove it as per your wish. So let's create a nested component. We can refer the component inside a component. So that is what a nested component means. Now let's go ahead and type class books extends react dot component. Render function has to be called, has to be created, and then you need to return some value. I will be saying a JSX will return a JSX, so my book collection. Okay, so this class has already been created. Now we'll create another class down below. So that's class book shelf extends react dot component. So both of these classes are a child class of react dot component, and obviously this will also have a render function. Open the brackets and we will return some value. Open a bracket again. You don't have to do this, but this keeps it together. If you have multiple JSX values, JSX terms, then it's better to have brackets. These are not curly brackets. Please do note that. If you do that, that will be an error. And we open a div, and then let's use a h1 here actually, and here this will be this book shelf is for, and that's it. So we will be completing the rest using the books. So that is how we will be nesting the components. We will put this inside of books. We'll put books inside of bookshelves. So this is like a real world example. Where do you put your books? You put it in the bookshelf. So that is what I am trying to do. I am going to put books inside of the bookshelf, and here down below I will again call my component. So how do we do that? So let's say books space backslash and close it. So that's a tag, and we'll close the tag, and you have to use the backslash after giving the space before naming the books component. And it's as simple as that to nest a class nest a component inside another one. And let's go ahead and save that, but before that just put a colon here, a semicolon here, and the two brackets are there. Alright, save this, and nothing shows up. That is because we have not called the render function. So let's render it, and that will be react dom dot render. So which component are we going to call? Is it going to be books or bookshelf? We have put books inside of bookshelf, so we have to call bookshelf as a whole, because the books are inside the bookshelf. Now that will be bookshelf. Oh, I'm so sorry. You'll have to put it in a tag, and then space backslash, close the tag, comma, document dot get element by ID, and semicolon outside right here. And let's go ahead and save this. Here we go. So this bookshelf is for my book collection. Now this bookshelf is coming from the bookshelf component, and we have put the books component inside of the bookshelf. So that is my book collection, that will come right after it. So my book collection is inside of the bookshelf component. So this would be coming from the books component, and this would be coming from the bookshelf component. There you go. So you have created your nested components, and the last and the final method of a different kind of a thing in components would be components in files. So let's go ahead and look into that. Before that, let us comment this, or you can delete it if you're getting confused. That is Control K C, and here we can do this. So just come out of it, go back up, and just do that. It's as simple as that. So React is all about reusing code, and it is good to insert some of your components in a separate file. So what all we did here, create so many different kinds of components. So instead of putting all of these in the same place, what we can do is we can put one of these components in a different file, and we can call that file here and use the components in that file in our render function. that'll just make it more cleaner and easier for us as a programmer. So let's go ahead and do that right away. So go ahead and click on this and on source, so we can do it in app.js right here, and it's already there, so it's already exporting it. You can use this component, but we will create our own, and you can actually delete it if you want to. But so right click on source, new file, and we'll call this as book compo.js. So in here you'll be doing the same thing again, saying import React from React and import React DOM from React DOM, and let's create a component here. So that will be class books extends React dot component, open the brackets, render function, and then return some JSX value. That will be my book collection. So imagine this as the, let's say for now, let's say you're building a website for some company, or as a freelancer you'll be building a website for a person for their business. So there will be let's say there will be 5 different pages in their business website, or a business web app, or a business anything. It can be anything actually, any web app. So let's say it has 5 different pages, and each of these pages have headers. So each time you can't sit and create components over and over again. You can't sit and create header for each and every page. Instead, just go ahead, create a file called header.js and use header.js component like we're going to use it in index now, in those 5 different web pages that we'll be creating for that web app. We will just use those header components, just a one line component call in 5 different pages. So it's as simple as that, and I'll show you how to do that as well. So let's go ahead and save this. Go to index. Here, very important, so if you have to do this, and if you don't, we are not using the component that we just created. So import, I'm so sorry, we have to actually export this value, or else we will not be importing it. So only if you export, you can import it. So export default books. So that is the component you've created, and you're just export default or predefined keywords. Export is you're exporting the components from this file, and default is a keyword. So export default books is you're exporting the component, and here we will be importing it. So what will we be importing? The component. So import books from where? The file. So obviously we'll have to call the file. So that's dots /, and it shows us here all the files. Actually Visual Studio Code, it is really good, and it shows us all the files that we have, and the file, the book compo is what we created. Now we will be using that here. React DOM.render, and we will just render what we imported. That is nothing but books. That's the component we imported, and we exported it over there. And then here we go, document, go ahead and save this, and I hope you've saved book compo as well. And this is all you have to type in your index.js to get the value, and this as well as import books from .book compo. That is the file we've created, this is the component we've created in that file. We're getting this component, we are importing this component from this file, and we are just rendering that component. So let's go ahead and save it, and it is giving us a warning, and it says React DOM is defined but never used where it is source book compo. So we don't, I told you that they'll give us a warning, so we don't have to use this here because obviously we're not rendering, we're not using React DOM. Let's save it. So there are no errors, there are no warnings. It's compiled successfully. So there you have it. So it says my book collection. This is coming from a different file to index.js, and there we're going to render, we're going to import that component, and here is where we're going to render it. So that's about it for this module. And I knew it was there was a lot of repetition, but this is how, so there is practice, and that's practice makes you perfect. And you have to I hope you're coding all of this in your computer as well, and these are probably all the concepts of components, and there are a lot of these questions are asked in your interview, so it is very important. And I will see you in the next video.